Welcome to Uncensored Beat.
I showed up. U.S. citizen is not permitted entry.
Cover the next big attack.
Zelensky's seemingly fraudulent election.
Bilateral security agreement President Joe Biden signed.
Quebec, the communist capital of North America.
What do Ukrainians think about US? Some believe that the US is to blame for this war.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Uncensored Beat, where you'll find the unfiltered truth. My name is James Indigo Bradley.
And I'm Flor Blanco. Thanks everyone for joining. Today we have Christy Grab. She is an activist within California, and she's actually been involved with fighting corruption within the franchise tax board within the California state government. And Christy, I understand you have some very interesting news related to California Senator Wiener, who happens to be considered the number one enemy for parental rights. I know we're going to get into that for a little bit, but welcome, Christy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So my husband's company went public and we started making quarterly estimated tax payments. And the franchise tax board kept losing our payments. So then they would charge us penalties, late fees, and interest for paying late when the check had cleared on time. But they also demanded that we repay those monies that they lost. So rather than finding the money that they lost, they wanted us to send them more money. And I did actually send them more money a few times to get them off my back, and they lost those payments too. So 14 payments in total were lost. And eventually I figured out I was caught in an embezzlement and racketeering scheme. So I sued them in San Diego Superior Court, acting as my own lawyer to try to get them to a judge to order them to stop this scheme. And in the documents that the franchise tax board provided to, propounded for the court, I found a lot more accounting fraud. Like was aware of the schemes that I got caught in, with the lost money, but I actually documented 8 bona fide criminal schemes in those accounting records. And there's prima facie evidence that there's more schemes as well. So anyway, the franchise tax board never at any point in time acknowledged the case as I had presented it to the court. They were arguing a completely different case. It was the weirdest thing. It was like we were arguing 2 completely different cases, and the judge went with their version of the case, not mine. And so the court never acknowledged all the accounting fraud. But anyway, I documented all the accounting fraud, and franchise tax board never denied the allegations. They kept saying that the accounting fraud was irrelevant to the case and had no bearing on the case. So in California, failure to deny constitutes admission of truth. So by not denying all the accounting fraud that I had uncovered, they basically acknowledged that they were committing accounting fraud. So since the judge never acknowledged the accounting fraud, he didn't order them to stop the accounting fraud. But I had all these records, hard proof, undeniable accounting fraud. So I contacted every regulatory agency that I could think of, asking them to step in and protect the taxpayers and put a stop to it. And nobody did. So then I got really mad and I decided to go after all the corrupt government organizations that are protecting the franchise tax board. And so I started using the common law strategy. So statutory law is a law that we're all familiar with, the Bar Association, and stuff. But there's another kind of law called constitutional law or common law or the law of the land. And that is the law that the founding fathers set up. And statutory law worked in parallel to common law for, a very long time. And then common law kind of got eaten up by statutory law. And I think by the 40s, almost all the constitutional courts had closed. I think there's only 3 left now. But anyway, I decided to file complaints via common law, and one of the allegations I was going to make in these complaints was treason of oath. So in order to claim treason of oath, I had to pull their oaths. So I pulled Scott Wiener's oath because he's on the state Senate Oversight Committee for tax issues. So his committee is supposed to be overseeing what the Franchise Tax Board does. And I've contacted that committee so many times. I sent them so much proof. It was actually one of the people that works on that committee, one of the deep state employees at the committee, who told me that the only way to put a stop to these schemes was to get a judge to order them to stop. And that's actually what initiated my San Diego Superior Court case. So anyway, I pulled Scott Wiener's oath and come to find out it had expired in 2018. So I contacted the state Senate and I said, hey, this guy is working unlawfully. You need to make him sign an oath or resign. And they ignored me. They didn't do anything. So then I checked with the Secretary of State to see if maybe it was a mistake or something. And the Secretary of State confirmed that there's no oath on file for him, since the only oath they have on file for him is the one that expired at the end of 2018. There's no current oath on file. So then I decided to veer from the federal criminal complaint that I was working on to go after Scott Wiener to get him out of office. And not just Wiener, but the other people at the state Senate who I've caught working without an oath. Of the 25 people at the state Senate that I pulled oaths for, 20 of them don't have current oaths. Yeah. So like it's a scheme over at the state Senate to not have people working with an oath. So I filed, I sent them a legal notice called a notice of legal violation saying, hey, these are what the laws say. And here's proof that the following 20 people are violating the laws, including Scott Wiener, and you need to make them all sign oaths. And they didn't. So they had, I gave them a deadline of July 26th to have everybody sign an oath, and they didn't. So then on August 9th, I served a writ of quo warranto. And so that's basically a notice to vacate office immediately because you don't have the right to be in that office. And he didn't vacate office. So yeah, so now it's time to work on the next step in the process, which is a notice of default. But meanwhile, common law doesn't have a lot of teeth. And so because it doesn't have a lot of teeth, you know, I can work on this forever and it won't necessarily make the state Senate comply with the laws and vacate Scott Wiener from office and void his laws and void his votes. So I'm trying to get people to call into the state Senate and demand that they comply with the laws. Like the state Senate is brazenly violating the laws by letting these people work without oaths. And they know it and they don't care. And so we need to all start calling the state Senate every day and demand that Scott Wiener be removed and all his legislation and voided and all his votes voided.
Fascinating, Christy. I tell you, running for office, I know the importance, the impact, and the violation of law that they are committing. So technically, they're criminal in the eyes of electoral law for operating in that position. So you're onto something, Christy. And by the way, hopefully this gets out to a lot of attorneys out there that would love to help you to go after one of the most vile, and I'll say that out loud many, many times, representatives, quote unquote, questionable representatives in the California state legislature, and that's Scott Wiener. So, Christy, what is the importance of the oath of office?
Oaths of office are required by both federal and state laws. And California actually has quite a lot of laws governing how oaths are to be administered. So if somebody's a permanent employee, they take what's called an oath of allegiance, and that is put in their personnel file. But anybody who's elected or works for somebody who is elected, like the state senator and the state senator staff, they have to take what's called an oath of office. And the oath of office expires at the end of their term. And so they have to take a new oath each term. And not having an oath is a felony, and it is punishable with 3 years in prison. It is anyone working without an oath is considered violating Federal Criminal Code 18 USC 912, which is a foreign agent acting as a government agent. And so passing laws as a foreign agent is major crime according to our constitutional laws. So why wouldn't Wiener sign an oath, right? I mean, the oaths are very simple. It just says that you promise to uphold the laws of the federal and state constitutions. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? Like, why wouldn't you sign that? The reason why they choose not to sign oaths is because treason of oath has very severe consequences, up to death. So you can actually get the death penalty for committing treason of oath. And working without an oath is only punishable with 3 years in prison. So somebody like Scott Wiener knows that he's passing laws that are unconstitutional violations of our rights. And he knows that somebody someday could go after him for treason of oath. So he's decided he's better off working without an oath, maybe facing 3 years in prison if someone pursues him, versus committing treason of oath and maybe losing his life for pushing these heinous laws that he's pushing. The other thing that's interesting is Scott Wiener is a lawyer, and lawyers understand better than anyone exactly the ramifications of the oath. And I've pulled a lot of O's of executives, and I would say usually low-level workers all have O's that are in order. But there's a lot of people at the high level that don't have O's. And I would say the vast majority of those people without O's are lawyers. So I think that what they do is when they get in a position where they're calling the shots on committing treason of oath, like they know they're committing treason of oath and they're calling the shots on that, I think they destroy their O's. Like at the Franchise Tax Board, 66% of the executive staff didn't have an oath while my court case was going on. And so I think that when they get into the position of executives, they just destroy their O's.
So you pursued it through the Superior Court of State of California in San Diego. Now, this is a violation of course, our codes here in California. You mentioned federal code. This can actually be pursued at the federal level. Have you thought about taking it on to the federal level?
So I'm working on common law right now, this common law thing. So the next step is the notice of default. And then after the notice of default, I'm supposed to notify Rob Bonta, the Attorney General. I'm supposed to notify the sheriff. And in theory, they're supposed to, arrest him and vacate his seat and stuff. But that's not going to happen. I also apparently can contact the military because foreign agents is under the purview of the military. So I will try to contact the military about it. And then there are 3 constitutional courts left, so I can apply to the constitutional courts. And unfortunately, the constitutional courts don't necessarily have to take every case. They're like the Supreme Court. They can pick and choose what they want to hear. And then there's always the option of filing in federal court, but I would need an attorney to do that. And I have not had any luck in finding an attorney that is willing to go against the government. I mean, it costs millions and millions and millions of dollars to sue the California government because they play dirty. So in my case, if I acted as my own attorney, but if I had hired an attorney, it would have cost me at least $800,000 for that case. And that's because they play dirty and they do a lot of dirty stuff to drive up the costs. And I don't have a bazillion dollars and I don't want to fundraise to try to get a bazillion dollars. So I don't know. I mean, I honestly, and it might not go anywhere because the federal government's pretty corrupt too. So I think really our best venue is the court of public humiliation. I think if enough people contact the state senate and demand that they follow the laws, they will eventually follow the laws. I mean, it's just a matter of them knowing that, like, the light's been shined on them. The cockroaches run when the light shined on them. So, we just all need to shine the light and say, hey, you guys are openly, brazenly violating the law. We're not going to let you do that. We're holding you accountable.
Love the way you think, by the way. I wish more people were as informed and educated on this particular part of the law as it affects the here in California, but this is probably happening nationwide. So I think you're really onto something, and I have a few attorneys that you may want to take this on, at least have a conversation, because it's been the constant issue here in the state of California. Those quote unquote selected or elected officials working outside the law. And this is a clear violation of our election laws. There's a little taste of what's happening here in California, so be aware it may be happening in your state. So let's take a pause for a moment and listen to our sponsors. We'll be right back with you.
Welcome to Uncensored Beat.
I showed up. U.S. citizen is not permitted entry.
Over the next big attack.
Zelensky's seemingly fraudulent election.
Bilateral security agreement President Joe Biden signed.
Quebec, the communist capital of North America.
What do Ukrainians think about US? Some believe that the US is to blame for this war.
So I was going to say, with Scott Wiener refusing to sign an oath, everybody at the state Senate that is knowingly letting him work without an oath is committing conspiracy to commit a felony. And everybody who works for him is committing conspiracy to commit a felony. And why is Wiener willing to allow all these people to go to prison just because he doesn't want to sign a piece of paper? Clearly, he knows he's in trouble with treason of oath if he's this adamant about refusing to sign one.
They don't care about the law because they feel that they have the judicial system in their favor. Who would, like you were mentioning, who would pick up a case like this?
The whole system is so corrupt. It's unbelievable. I mean, I've gone round and round and round with statutory law. Like, I've tried so many avenues in statutory law, and it's just unbelievably corrupt. And the Bar Association is a big piece of the corruption racket.
I've heard similar or different cases that had many issues with the bar. So can you talk about your experience with the California Bar?
I filed 4 complaints against the attorneys with the California Bar Association regarding my franchise tax board. One of them, so the administrative court that handles franchise tax board issues is called the Office of Tax Appeals. So the Office of Tax Appeal, the Franchise Tax Board will give you a free attorney to represent you in the Office of Tax Appeals case. But that free attorney works for the franchise, is a student who the supervisor works for the Franchise Tax Board, and the student works under the purview of the Franchise Tax Board. And the job of the attorney is to make sure that you lose. I mean, ever since the Office of Tax Appeals was implemented when Governor Brown was in office, back before the Office of Tax Appeals, quite a few people actually got their money back from the Franchise Tax Board. But since the implementation of the Office of Tax Appeals, it's like 90-something% of times the Franchise Tax Board wins. So anyway, my attorney wouldn't address the accounting fraud. He refused to address it. And so when I got really pushy about wanting to address it in my case, he fired me as a client. So I filed a complaint against him with the bar, and the bar said an attorney can represent you any way they want to. They're not required to represent you the way you want to be represented. So they sided with him. Meanwhile, the opposing attorney, his name was Eric Yadao, he improperly redacted documents and omitted documents that were exculpatory. So the Franchise Tax Board was arguing that we were willfully negligent, but they hid that we had contacted the Franchise Tax Board 71 times regarding these lost payments. So, I mean, I think anybody will argue that contacting somebody 71 times does not qualify as willfully negligent. So, I mean, I was desperately trying to get these situations cleared up, and the franchise tax board just kept saying, sorry, money's lost. But and they also omitted the documents that showed the accounting fraud. I mean, actually, the majority of documents that I found some of the accounting fraud in those documents. That's how I knew it was a bona fide embezzlement and racketeering scheme. So anyway, so I filed he also fabricated false stories about me and my husband to try to make us look like deadbeats that were like off traveling instead of like taking care of our responsibilities. So I filed a complaint against him, and the bar said that Mr. Yadao claimed that the redactions and omissions were for my own privacy, and that they agreed that that was acceptable. So like that was all exculpatory evidence, and he committed fraud by making these false stories up. So then the next one was in the San Diego County Superior Court case. So that was against Attorney General Anna Barsagian. So the Attorney General represents Franchise Tax Board in court. There is nobody in the government who will represent the people when you have a problem with the government. The job of the Attorney General is to ensure the government monopoly is protected from people like me who want to break up the monopoly. So, they go after people who threaten their monopoly. So anyways, they were the opposing counsel. They did so much stuff, it was unreal. She on purpose posted me and my husband's social security numbers on the internet to retaliate against us. It couldn't have possibly been an accident because too many people made too many mistakes for it to have been an accident. It had to be intentional. The two people at the Franchise Tax Board committed multiple counts of perjury, and one made false statements to the court. I couldn't document that it was intentional perjury, but at least one of the people was a victim of suborning perjury. So suborning perjury means that person was coerced to commit perjury. And I documented that Attorney General Barsagian was conspired to commit suborning perjury with this Franchise Tax Board employee. Let's see, she misrepresented what the law said. She harassed me. She unlawfully harassed me. She took advantage of the fact that I'm not a trained lawyer to try to trick me. I mean, the things that she did were unbelievable. If I had done these things, I would be in jail for the rest of my life. And the Bar Association refused to open a complaint against her. They're like, nope, sorry, because there was a judge on our case, they're on the case, we have no responsibility of oversight. And so I got really pushy and I demanded that they open a case against her. And so they did, and they immediately closed it, saying, again, if there's a judge on the case, we're absolved of oversight. Like it was up to the judge to punish her. So it's unreal. And the auditor's office has published a report about how corrupt the bar is, and how they don't actually punish people who do wrongdoings. I think that was 2 years ago that report came out from the California Auditor's Office. But get this, right now this is happening. It's actually the comment period. So if anybody wants to go to the Bar Association's website, you can make a public comment about this. The Bar Association is trying to make it so that if there's disciplinary action taken against an attorney, that the bar doesn't have to disclose that anymore. They can keep that information secret from the public.
Oh, it's so shocking to hear this.
Yeah, so actually, really, if you can encourage people to go make comments on the bar's website about they're trying to completely take away transparency. They hardly punish anybody. It is very rare that they take disciplinary action. They usually sweep things under the rug. And the few times that they do, it has to be really egregious. And now they want to hide that from the public. It's unbelievable.
Not only do we have a broken judicial system, we have a corrupt one that's working against the taxpayers like yourself, double, triple taxing you, hitting you with fines and violations, and then smearing you and defiling you and vilifying you in public. There's so many people out there like you, maybe not on the tax issues, but property rights, parental rights. And talking about parental rights, Florida, can you share the California Parents Union, a little something what's going on there? Then we jump right back in with Christy.
Absolutely. So the California Parents Union was established to be a counterpart of the California Teachers Association, also known as the Teachers Union of the state of California. It's been documented in several different media outlets that the California Teachers Association is among one of the largest political lobbyists in the state of California. And many parents lately have been very concerned in regards to laws that have been pushed that have taken away many of the parents' rights. So the California Parents Union is here to help support parents and be that legal force, especially in the case of California Senator Wiener, who has been associated with many of these heinous laws that many parents and guardians have attacked children and have subjected them to a lot of harm, and assisted in making it to where these children are also knowingly supporting these kinds of laws as well. So come and join the California Parents Union. We'd love to have you, and together we can make a difference.
Well, thank you, Florida. Go ahead, Christy.
Can I add something to that? In
Sure,
addition
please.
to the heinous things that Scott Wiener has authored himself, he also aggressively blocks legislation that protects children. This year, Shannon Groves introduced a bill to make child sex trafficking a felony. The fact that it's already not a felony is despicable. But anyway, she was trying to make it a felony. And you know what Scott Wiener did? He gutted it. So now the way the bill stands is it's only a felony if somebody over 18 hires a child prostitute. So a 17-year-old can buy as many infants as he wants and do whatever he wants with an infant, no repercussions. It's only a felony if if an adult buys a child, or if an adult purchases a child who's 16 or 17, that's only a misdemeanor, slap on the wrist. And if an adult buys a child 14 or under, 14 or under, maybe it's 15 and under. The first time it's a misdemeanor, slap on the wrist. The second time it's a felony. So like he's making it so that it's okay to buy sex trafficked children. This is despicable.
Well, he has a long history of promoting pedophilia and putting in laws and making laws, now unconstitutional laws, by the way, acting as a forward agent. I think we have enough to really jump into this conversation. Not, but all about action. And the last question we have for you is, if you reach out and ask people of things that you want them to do, either working with you or not only being informed, what they can do as a citizen. I mean, action items, because that's what we're all about, are solutions and actions. What would you share with the public?
My feeling is that if everybody picks one topic of corruption to tackle, the world will be a better place within a few years. And I think it's actually not important what the topic is, and it doesn't need to be a big topic because it's a wall, right? And I'm fighting pretty high up the wall right now, but that wall is supported by a bunch of bricks farther down. And if other people start pushing on those little bricks farther down, then the entire wall collapses. So I think it's really important that people get involved with whatever issue it is that's on their heart in whatever way they can. Even if it's something as simple as just going to your county supervisor meeting and making a speech. Those actually help. I mean, when enough people show up and make speeches, just like the state Senate has to eventually listen to the people if enough people call, if enough people show up at the board meetings, then they have to listen too. And so right now, the legislators at all levels are feeling very arrogant that we're the boss and you're our peons, but that's not the way it is. The reality is we are their employers. They are public servants. They work for us to do what we want them to do. And we just need to get more forceful about what we do, and especially about what we don't want them to do. And if we all start saying no and pushing back, the whole thing will collapse pretty darn fast. It's just a numbers game. It really is.
Is there anything that do you need help? Would you like people to go
Yeah.
part of what you're putting forward in your effort?
So everybody, I would love it if everybody calls the state Senate every day to demand Wiener resign. His laws are voided, his votes are voided. If it's all a numbers game about getting people to call. If anybody lives in Wiener's district, I would love if you could get a meeting with his representatives and ask his representative, why won't he promise to follow the state and federal constitutions? And why would he rather go to jail for 3 years than sign this piece of paper promising to follow the law? And why are you still working for him, knowing that you're probably going to go to jail for conspiring to commit a felony? And I'm trying to keep it nonpartisan because this is not a partisan issue. This is about administration, and we have to follow the laws in a by the books way, and Scott Wiener refuses to do that. He has no business making the laws when he refuses to follow them himself.
Yeah, actually, that's one thing I did want to mention, and it is kind of a partisan statement. And I think one of the things that we can say, based on current data, is that the majority of the registered voters in California are still registered as Democrats, which tends to lean as a very pro-big government type of attitude when it comes to running the state. And I think that's very interesting considering that what you have said, there are many people within the current state government who have actually come against that trust that many within the Democratic Party, based upon their platforms, has given to them, which is to go ahead and represent them by not taking the oath. I think that's a very interesting topic there, that those of you that actually really hits home for many people who believe in the government and believe in that trust that the government should follow what's best in the people's interests.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, one of the biggest issues that any potential politician, and I hate to even call myself that, is the disenfranchisement that we've experienced. But honestly, what we have gotten so far on this whole topic, everything seems to circle back around Scott Wiener. Scott Wiener. So I think in our following segments, we're going to have a little more of an expose on Scott Wiener. And now that he hasn't sworn an oath of office since 2018, what laws he was co-authored in, then we can really start going after the head of that dragon.
So I'm a mom, so I follow parenting news. So I was very well aware of what Scott Wiener was up to when I pulled his oath. And when I saw he didn't have one, I immediately started contacting parental organizations saying, hey, help me get rid of this guy. But come to find out, everybody hates him. He's very anti-gun. The gun people hate him, and he's very aggressive about getting high dense housing into cities. And so the real estate people hate him. Like, a lot of people hate him for forcing high density housing down our throat. So somebody suggested that I check all the laws that passed this year that required a 2/3 vote, and to check to see if it was solely across party lines. Because anything that was voted in across party lines is now void without Wiener's vote. Like, that law has to be voided. And the first one that popped up was a new 11% tax on ammo. So I'm trying to get the gun owners' attention now because, hey, this 11% tax on ammo is void because Wiener's vote is void. And nobody can argue it's not void because they've known since January he's working unlawfully, and that law just passed very recently.
I think I have an attorney for you. Not me, because I'm not an attorney, but there's a few people that I've worked over my course of my campaigning that really focus in on the Second Amendment and First Amendment. So I think we have some good things coming. Thank you so much, Chrissy. Anything final thoughts before we say goodbye to everybody and wish them to go ahead?
Can I share a little story?
Sure.
Okay. So, I've been calling the state Senate for a year now. And usually they won't take my calls. Usually there's two offices that I regularly call, and the receptionists both know me. One of them answers the phone, "Hi, Christine," when I call. And, the other one, I, chat with her. Super nice ladies. But, I always ask, can I talk to Erica or John, depending on which office, which office. And they always say, "Oh, they're not available," in a tone of voice that indicates, like, why don't you just give up and stop calling already? So right after I served the notice of legal violations, as I was getting ready to mail off the writ of quo warranto, I called and I asked to talk to John. And she said, "Hold on, let me put you through to him." And so he said, "I got your package. I haven't had a chance to do anything with it, but I want you to know I'll look into it." So that's the first time I got him on the phone in a very, very long time. And I'm certain it's because so many people had called in. So now fast forward 2 weeks in time, and I had already served the writ of quo warranto. So I called John's office back, and it was not the usual receptionist. It was a different lady who I've talked to quite a few times. And so I asked the lady, "Hey, did Wiener and everybody else resign?" And she burst out laughing. I mean, a big, hearty belly laugh. So if that tells you how arrogant they are, that laws don't apply to them, it's her bursting out laughing like that.
Wow. Talk about insult to injury. Oh, well, I admire you, Christy. You're a fighter. That's what we need more of in the state of California and nationally. So we're gonna have quite a few calls in the next couple of weeks to see if we can get things teed up. As people start attacking my brothers and sisters out there like you, Christy, it really does. It wears on me, and I get fired up. So you have a whole team that's going to muster, an army that's about to muster behind you. This is going to happen, especially taking on the parent. Because being parents as we are, this is a God-given gift that we have to take serious as parents. And then they come after small business, medium-sized business owners, triple taxing them, vilifying them in public space like they have you. That is wrong at every level. So, Christy, once again, thank you very much for spending your day with us. And we'll get this out there for people to hear, listen, and also get active.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Christy.
And those that are still with us, please like, share, and follow. We have some more great information and content coming your way in the next couple episodes. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you and have a great day.
Welcome to Uncensored Beat.
I showed up. U.S. citizen is not permitted entry.
Over the next big attack.
Zelensky's seemingly fraudulent election.
Bilateral security agreement President Joe Biden signed.
Quebec, the communist capital of North America.
What do Ukrainians think about US? Some believe that the US is to blame for this war.